Claire Thompson was drinking her morning coffee when she noticed something wrong with the stars. She had been studying space from the observatory on Earth's moon for 15 years and knew the night sky better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. But this morning there was a dark spot where bright stars should have been. She adjusted the powerful telescope and focused on the area beyond Pluto's orbit. What she saw made her drop her coffee cup. The stars were not missing. Something enormous was blocking their light, something that bent space around itself like a lens made of gravity. "Control, this is Observatory 7, she said into her communication device. "I need to report an anomaly in Sector 12. Go ahead, Observatory 7. There is a large object moving toward the inner solar system. It appears to be the size of a small moon, and it is traveling faster than anything we have ever detected." There was a pause before Control responded. "Observatory 7, please confirm your readings. Are you detecting natural phenomena or artificial objects?" Claire checked her instruments again, but the readings were the same. "Control, I am detecting artificial objects. Multiple objects, actually. They appear to be moving in formation, and they are definitely headed toward Earth." Within an hour, every telescope and sensor in the solar system was pointed toward the area that Claire had discovered. The images that came back confirmed humanity's worst fears. The harvesters had arrived, and they were nothing like what anyone had expected. Marcus Wright was in the command center on Luna Base when the first clear pictures arrived. The general had been preparing for this day for 4 years, but seeing the enemy with his own eyes was still a shock. The harvester ships were not sleek and metallic like human spacecraft. They looked organic, like living creatures that had grown in the depths of space. "How many ships are we looking at?" he asked his intelligence officer. Lieutenant Carol Adams was studying the data from dozens of monitoring stations. "At least 50 large vessels, sir. Each one appears to be several miles long. But, sir, there is something else. The largest ship is not like the others." Marcus looked at the main display screen as the image focused on the Harvester mothership. It was not just large, it was impossibly large. The ship stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction, and its hull seemed to be made of compressed starlight that pulsed with internal energy. "How big is that thing?" he asked. "Our best estimate puts it at roughly the size of Earth's moon, sir, and the gravitational reading suggests it has the mass of a small star." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Humanity had been preparing to fight alien spaceships. They had not been prepared to fight something that was essentially a weaponized celestial body. "Sir, we are receiving reports from the outer monitoring stations," said another officer. "The Harvester formation is having effects on planetary orbits. Jupiter's moons are being pulled out of their normal positions." Through the command center windows, Marcus could see Earth hanging in space. The blue and white planet looked so peaceful and beautiful. In a few days or weeks, that planet would be under attack by creatures that had conquered the entire galaxy. He wondered if Earth would still look beautiful when this was over. "General Wright," came a voice from the communication system. "This is Admiral Blake calling from the command ship Defiance. We are moving the fleet into position for first contact." Marcus activated the communication link. "Admiral, what is the status of our defensive preparations? All weapon platforms are operational, and the quantum weapon is charged and ready. But General, I have to tell you, these harvester ships are much larger than our intelligence predicted. Our conventional weapons might not be effective against targets this size." "What about the quantum weapon?" "Dr. Weber says it will work, but only if we can get the harvesters to attempt planetary harvesting. If they decide to destroy Earth with conventional attacks instead, our trap will be useless." Marcus nodded grimly. Everything depended on the harvesters behaving exactly as the alien records predicted. If they had learned new tactics in the millions of years since the last harvest, humanity's plan would fail. "Admiral, how long until they reach Earth?" "At their current speed, approximately 72 hours. But, sir, we are detecting some unusual behavior. The smaller ships are spreading out through the solar system, but the mothership is heading directly for Earth." Marcus walked to the tactical display that showed the entire solar system. The harvester ships were spreading out like drops of oil in water. Each one was taking position near a different planet or large moon. But the massive mothership continued moving toward Earth in a straight line. "They are not acting like an invasion force," he said. "They are acting like farmers preparing to harvest multiple fields at once." Lieutenant Adams was monitoring communications from across the solar system. "Sir, we are receiving reports from the Mars colonies. They can see harvester ships approaching their orbit. The colonists are requesting permission to evacuate. Negative on evacuation. Everyone stays at their posts. If we start running now, we will be running forever." Marcus knew it was a hard decision, but it was the right one. The moment humanity showed fear, the harvesters would know they were facing prey instead of predators, and prey got eaten. The next 24 hours passed in tense preparation as both sides moved into position. The harvester ships took up stations throughout the solar system, but they did not attack. They simply waited and watched as if they were studying their targets. On Earth, people looked up at the night sky and could actually see the harvester mothership as a dark spot that blocked out stars. Every television and radio station was broadcasting updates about the alien arrival. Some people panicked and tried to flee to remote areas. Others gathered in churches and prayed. But most people simply went about their normal lives because there was nothing else they could do. Claire Thompson was still at her observatory when the harvesters finally made their move. She watched through her telescope as the mothership began to glow with an energy that hurt her eyes even through the protective filters. "Control, this is Observatory 7, she reported. "The large vessel is activating some kind of energy field. I am detecting massive power levels unlike anything in our database." From his command center, Marcus Wright could see the energy field spreading out from the harvester mothership like ripples on a pond. But these ripples were made of space itself, bending and twisting around the alien vessel. "All stations report," he ordered. "Sir, the energy field is reaching Earth's orbit. Our monitoring satellites are detecting strange effects on local gravity and time. The field is also affecting our defensive platforms. Several weapon systems are experiencing power fluctuations. General, the quantum weapon is reacting to the harvester energy field. Dr. Weber says the alien systems are automatically activating in response to harvester technology." Marcus smiled grimly. This was exactly what the Watchers had predicted. The harvesters could not resist using their harvesting technology when they detected advanced civilizations, and the quantum weapon had been designed to respond automatically to that specific energy signature. "Admiral Blake reports status of the fleet. General, our ships are in position, but we are experiencing some unusual effects. Several crews are reporting that time seems to be moving differently near the harvester vessels." "What do you mean differently?" "Clocks on ships near harvester positions are running slower than normal. It appears the aliens are manipulating time, as well as space." Marcus realized they were not just fighting advanced technology. They were fighting beings that could control the fundamental forces of the universe. But the quantum weapon was also based on those same forces. Maybe humanity had a chance after all. "Sir, the harvester mothership is beginning planetary approach. Estimated time until it reaches Earth's atmosphere is 6 hours. And the quantum weapon charging to full power, sir. Dr. Weber estimates another 4 hours until it reaches maximum effectiveness." Marcus did the math in his head. The harvesters would reach Earth 2 hours before the quantum weapon was ready. Those would be the longest 2 hours in human history. "All stations prepare for combat operations. This is not a drill. In 6 hours we find out if 4 years of preparation was enough." As he gave the order, Marcus looked up at Earth one more time. The planet was still beautiful, but now it was surrounded by the strange glow of the harvester energy field. The oldest predators in the galaxy had finally arrived to claim their latest harvest, but they had never faced a species that knew they were coming. They had never faced a species that had spent years preparing for this exact moment. And they had never faced a species stubborn enough to build a trap using the forces of a star itself. In a few hours, Marcus would know if human determination was enough to break a cycle that had lasted for millions of years. The greatest battle in the history of the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity was as ready as they would ever be. The harvesters had come to collect another crop of intelligent life. But this time the crop was fighting back with weapons left behind by every previous victim of the cosmic harvest. This time things were going to be different. Marcus Wright looked at the tactical display showing harvester ships throughout the solar system and smiled. "Come on then," he said quietly. "Let us see what you are really made of." The battle for the future of all intelligent life in the galaxy was about to begin. Jake Morrison stood in the cold chamber deep under Europa's ice and felt his breath form clouds in the freezing air. The walls around him were not made by human hands. They were smooth and dark with strange patterns that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. He had been the mission commander for 6 months now, and nothing had prepared him for what they found down here. Lisa Warren knelt beside a wall covered in symbols that glowed with a faint blue light. She had been working on translating the alien writing for weeks. Her computer showed hundreds of different symbol combinations, but none of them made sense until today. She looked up at Jake with wide eyes full of fear and excitement. "Jake, you need to see this right now," she said. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I finally understand what these symbols mean. This is not just art or decoration. This is history, Jake. History of things that happened millions of years ago." Jake walked over to where Lisa was working. The wall was covered in rows and rows of symbols that went from floor to ceiling. Some sections were damaged by time, but most of it was still readable. Lisa pointed to a section near the top, where the symbols were larger and more detailed. "Look, at this part," she said. "These symbols tell about different worlds and different species. Each section talks about a different civilization that lived among the stars. But Jake, every single story ends the same way. Every civilization just disappears." Jake studied the symbols that Lisa was pointing to. Even though he could not read them, he could see patterns. The same type of symbols appeared over and over again at the end of each section. It looked like the same word or phrase being repeated. "What does that repeated symbol mean?" he asked. Lisa checked her translation computer again. "It means harvested," she said quietly. "Jake, every advanced civilization in this galaxy was harvested by something. The timeline shows this happened over and over again for millions of years." The chamber felt even colder now. Jake pulled his jacket tighter around himself as he tried to understand what Lisa was telling him. "Harvested by what?" he asked. Lisa moved to another section of the wall. This part had different symbols that were darker and seemed to absorb the blue light instead of reflecting it. The translation calls them harvesters. They are described as ancient beings that move between stars. According to this, they wait for civilizations to become advanced enough, and then they come to collect them. Collect them for what purpose? The symbols are not clear about that, but they describe the harvesters as farmers and the civilizations as crops. They wait for the right time to harvest, and then they take everything. All the people, all the knowledge, all the life. Nothing is left behind. Jake felt sick to his stomach. He looked around the chamber and realized they were standing in what might be a tomb, the last record of a civilization that had been erased from existence. How long ago did this happen to the species that built this place? Lisa checked the star charts that were carved into the walls. The positions of the stars and planets could be used to figure out when the symbols were made. She did the calculations on her computer and her face went pale. According to the star positions, this chamber was sealed about 50,000 years ago. But Jake, look at this section over here. These symbols are much newer. Maybe only a few thousand years old. She led him to a wall that looked different from the others. The symbols here were carved deeper and filled with a different material that still glowed brightly. This part was added later. It talks about a pattern. The harvesters come back every few million years to check for new civilizations that have grown advanced enough to harvest. Jake read the fear in Lisa's eyes. "When do they come back?" Lisa pointed to a complex chart covered in astronomical symbols. Based on this timeline, the last harvest cycle ended about 50,000 years ago. The pattern shows they usually wait between 2 and 5 million years between harvests. But Jake, this section here suggests something different. She moved to the newest part of the wall where the symbols were brightest. This part was written by survivors, a few members of the species that built this place. They hid here after their world was harvested. They spent their remaining years studying the pattern and they figured out something important. What did they figure out? The waiting time between harvests is getting shorter. Each cycle happens faster than the last one. And according to their calculations, the next harvest should have happened already. We are overdue, Jake, by several thousand years. The chamber was completely silent except for the sound of their breathing. Jake tried to process what he was being told. Somewhere in The darkness between stars, there were beings that had been destroying civilizations for millions of years, and they were supposed to come back to this part of the galaxy soon. There is more, Lisa said. She moved to the very last section of symbols. The survivors left a message for whoever might find this place. They knew their species was dying out, but they wanted to warn the next civilization that grew up in this area. Jake looked at the symbols that seemed to pulse with urgency. What does the warning say? It says the next species to find this message would be the ones who faced the harvesters. The survivors studied Earth, Jake. They watched our planet for thousands of years. They knew we would eventually develop space travel and find this place. The message is specifically for humanity. Jake felt the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. What else does it say? Lisa read from her translation. It says we were not chosen because we are special or advanced. We were chosen because of how we react to threats. The survivors studied human history. They saw our wars and our struggles. They believe humanity has something that other species did not have. What is that? Stubbornness, Jake. Pure stubborn refusal to give up even when everything looks hopeless. Every other species they studied would try to hide or negotiate or run away when faced with extinction. But humans keep fighting even when they know they cannot win. Jake understood now why he felt so cold. It was not just the temperature in the chamber. It was the realization that humanity was about to face something that had defeated every other intelligent species in the galaxy. But the aliens who built this place thought humans might be different enough to have a chance. Is there anything else in the message? Lisa nodded and pointed to the final line of symbols. It says they left us tools, hidden in different parts. Of this chamber, there are things we can use. Technology and weapons that previous civilizations tried to develop but never had time to finish. The survivors completed the work and hid it here. Jake looked around the chamber with new eyes. This was not just a tomb or a warning. It was an armory left by the dead for the living. The last gift from an extinct species to the ones who might finally break the cycle. Lisa started documenting everything. Every symbol, every chart, every piece of technology. We need to get this information back to Earth as fast as possible. As Lisa began her work, Jake stood in the center of the chamber and looked up at the ceiling. Somewhere above them, through miles of ice and rock and space, Earth continued its orbit around the sun. People were living their normal lives not knowing that their entire species had just learned it was next in line for extinction. But they also did not know that humanity now had something no other species had ever possessed. They had advance warning and the tools left behind by those who came before them. The harvesters might be ancient and powerful, but they had never faced a species that knew they were coming. Jake smiled grimly in the cold chamber. The aliens were right about one thing. Humans were stubborn enough to keep fighting no matter what, the odds looked like. And now they had time to prepare for the biggest fight in the history of their species. Nick Davis floated in the control room of his construction ship and watched a mountain-sized asteroid being turned into a weapons platform. 3 years had passed since the discovery on Europa, and Earth looked nothing like it used to. Every nation had put aside their differences to work on the greatest construction project in human history. The asteroid that Nick was working on was just one of hundreds scattered throughout the solar system. Each one was being hollowed out and filled with weapons built from alien technology. The work was dangerous and exhausting, but no one complained. Everyone knew what would happen if they were not ready when the harvesters arrived. "Nick, we have a problem with Reactor 7, came a voice through his communication system. It was Tony Martinez, the chief engineer on the construction crew. "The alien power source is not connecting properly with our systems." Nick pushed himself away from the observation window and floated toward the engineering section. Working in zero gravity had taken months to get used to, but now it felt natural. What kind of connection problem? The alien technology seems to work on completely different principles than our electronics. Every time we try to link them together, the human systems shut down. Nick reached the engineering section where Tony was standing next to a device that looked like it was made of crystal and metal combined. The alien power sources were incredible. Each one could produce more energy than a nuclear reactor, but they were also completely mysterious. Human scientists still did not understand how they worked. "Have you tried the isolation buffers that Dr. Weber designed?" Nick asked. Tony nodded. 3 different types. The alien device just seems to know when. It is connected to human technology and refuses to work properly. This was the same problem they had been facing all across the solar system. The alien weapons and power sources worked perfectly when they were alone, but connecting them to human systems was almost impossible. It was like the alien technology was designed to prevent other species from using it. Nick's communication system crackled to life with a call from Earth. Construction Ship 7, this is Mission Control. We have new orders for you. Go ahead, Control. Dr. Weber wants you to try the new connection protocol. Instead of trying to make the alien technology work with human systems, he wants you to build hybrid systems that are part human and part alien. Nick looked at Tony, who was already pulling up the new technical plans on his computer. The hybrid approach was much more complex than what they had been trying before. Instead of connecting alien devices to human ships, they would build entirely new types of ships that used both technologies together. This is going to take months longer than our original timeline, Tony said. We might not have months, Nick replied. The monitoring stations have been picking up strange signals from deep space. Something big is moving in our direction. As if to prove his point, the communication system activated again. All construction teams report to Command Channel for priority briefing. Nick switched to the command channel and heard Admiral Blake's voice. Ladies and gentlemen, we have received confirmation that the harvesters are approaching our solar system. Long-range sensors detected massive objects moving faster than light toward our position. Estimated arrival time is 18 months. Construction crews throughout the solar system went completely silent. 18 months was not enough time to finish even half of the weapon platforms they had planned to build. However, Admiral Blake continued, we have received new information from the Europa research team. Dr. Warren has discovered additional alien technology that might change our timeline. Nick felt a spark of hope. Lisa Warren and her team had been working non-stop to uncover more alien secrets. Every few months they found something new that changed humanity's plans. The new discovery is a construction method that the aliens called rapid fabrication. Instead of building each weapon platform individually, we can use alien devices to copy existing platforms. One completed platform can be used as a template to create dozens of identical copies. Tony grabbed Nick's arm in excitement. That could cut our construction time from years to months. Admiral Blake was not finished. The catch is that rapid fabrication requires enormous amounts of energy, more energy than our current power systems can provide. We will need to build the quantum weapon that the Watchers designed, not just to trap the harvesters, but to power the rapid fabrication process. Nick understood the problem immediately. The quantum weapon was supposed to be humanity's secret advantage against the harvesters. If they used it to power construction projects, the harvesters would detect it long before they arrived. There would be no surprise attack. All construction teams will now focus on building the quantum weapon first. Once it is operational, we will have enough power to rapidly fabricate the defensive platforms we need. The weapon will be built at Luna Base under the supervision of Colonel Martinez. Nick knew Colonel Martinez by reputation. He was one of the toughest military engineers in the Space Forces and completely fearless. If anyone could build an alien superweapon in 18 months, it would be him. Construction Ship 7. You are reassigned to Luna Base immediately. Report to Colonel Martinez for new orders. As Nick's ship began the journey from the asteroid belt to Earth's moon, he thought about what humanity was attempting. They were trying to build a weapon that used an entire star as its power source. They were trying to mass-produce defensive platforms using alien technology they barely understood, and they were trying to do all of this while preparing for the arrival of enemies that had conquered the galaxy for millions of years. 2 weeks later, Nick was standing in the construction bay on Luna Base, looking at the strangest building project he had ever seen. The quantum weapon looked nothing like any human technology. It was a massive sphere made of what appeared to be liquid metal that constantly shifted and changed shape. Alien symbols floated in the air around it and disappeared when anyone tried to touch them. Colonel Martinez was a short man with dark hair and intense eyes. He had been working 18-hour days since construction began, and it showed in his tired face. but his voice was still strong and determined when he briefed the construction teams. "This weapon is unlike anything humans have ever built," he said. "We are not just assembling parts, we are growing the weapon using alien biotechnology that thinks for itself." Nick raised his hand. "What do you mean it thinks for itself?" "The alien construction systems are partially alive. They can make decisions about how to build things based on what they think will work best. Sometimes they ignore our plans and build something completely different." Tony whistled quietly. "How do we know it will not decide to build something that kills us instead of the harvesters?" Colonel Martinez smiled grimly. "We do not know. But the alternative is to let the harvesters arrive while we are still defenseless. The alien systems seem to understand that we are trying to fight the same enemy they were designed to fight. So far they have been helpful." Nick looked at the growing weapon and felt both amazed and terrified. The sphere was already larger than a football stadium, and it was still growing. Streams of liquid metal flowed through the air around it, following patterns that made no sense to human eyes. Sometimes the metal would form complex shapes that looked almost like alien writing before melting back into the main structure. "How long until it is finished?" he asked. "The alien systems estimate 6 more months for basic completion, but that is just the weapon itself. We still need to build the power transmission network that will connect it to our sun." Nick tried to imagine a network of alien technology that could channel the entire energy output of a star. The engineering challenges were beyond anything humans had ever attempted. "Have we tested the power transmission system?" "Small-scale tests only. We managed to channel about 1% of the energy from a solar collector array. The results were promising but also frightening. Frightening how Colonel Martinez led them to an observation window that looked out at a section of Luna's surface that had been completely transformed. Instead of gray moon rock, there was a crater filled with what looked like frozen lightning. The rock itself seemed to glow with internal energy. That crater was created during our first test of the power transmission system. We only used it for 3 seconds, but it released enough energy to reshape several square miles of the lunar surface." Nick stared at the crater and realized they were building something that could accidentally destroy entire planets if they made a mistake. "What happens when we connect it to the sun?" "According to the alien calculations, the weapon will be able to create a quantum field that extends throughout the solar system. Anything caught in that field will be connected to the weapon. The more energy they try to drain from planets in the field, the more trapped they will become." Tony was studying the technical displays that showed the weapon's progress. "What if the harvesters do not try to harvest anything? What if they just attack us directly with conventional weapons? Then we fight them the old-fashioned way with the defensive platforms and colony ships. But the alien record suggests that harvesters cannot resist trying to drain energy from advanced civilizations. It is like an addiction for them." Nick nodded. "So we are building a trap that uses their own nature against them." Helen Carter sat at the head of the long table in the emergency meeting room and watched the most powerful people on Earth argue with each other. The President of the United States had called this meeting after Jake Morrison's team sent their report from Europa. For 6 hours now, the world leaders had been trying to understand what the alien message meant for humanity. Paul Henderson slammed his hand on the table hard enough to make the water glasses shake. The general was a big man with gray hair and scars from old battles. He had fought in 3 wars, but nothing had prepared him for this kind of enemy. "We are talking about something that has been killing entire civilizations since before dinosaurs walked on Earth," he said. "These harvesters have technology we cannot even imagine. What exactly are we supposed to do against them?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew Paul was right. How could one planet fight against beings that had conquered the entire galaxy over and over again? Helen looked around the table at the faces of presidents, prime ministers, and generals. They all looked scared. Lisa Warren's voice came through the communication link from Europa. The connection was fuzzy, but her words were clear. "The alien records show that some species lasted longer than others. The ones that survived the longest all had certain things in common. They never stopped fighting even when they knew they could not win." Admiral Susan Blake was reading through the translated alien texts on her tablet. She was the head of Earth's Space Forces and one of the smartest military minds alive. "I found something interesting in these records. The aliens mentioned something called preparation time. Species that knew the harvesters were coming did better than those that were surprised. Helen leaned forward in her chair. How much better? Instead of being wiped out in days or weeks, they lasted for months or even years. Some managed to send colony ships to other parts of the galaxy before their home worlds were destroyed. Dr. Carl Weber was the head of Earth's Science Council. He had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke up. The alien technology we found on Europa is more advanced than anything we have ever seen. If we can understand it and build copies, we might have a chance. Paul shook his head. A chance to do what? Run away and hide in other star systems. Even if we could build ships fast enough to evacuate Earth, where would we go? According to these records, the harvesters eventually find every colony. Lisa's voice came through the communication link again. There is something else in the alien records. Something the last civilization discovered before they were harvested. They called themselves the Watchers, and they spent their final years working on a special project. Everyone in the room stopped talking and listened. Helen could hear her own heartbeat in the silence. What kind of project? Helen asked. The Watchers figured out how the harvesters choose their targets. They do not just attack randomly. They wait for civilizations to reach a specific level of technology and population. But the Watchers discovered something else. The harvesters are not just predators. They are farmers. Admiral Blake looked up from her tablet. What does that mean? It means they do not just kill civilizations for fun or resources. They use the life force and knowledge of advanced species for something. The Watchers believe the harvesters need this energy to maintain their own existence. Carl Weber started typing notes on his computer. So they are parasites that feed on intelligent life. More than that, Lisa continued. The Watchers discovered that the harvesters cannot create new technology or knowledge on their own. They can only take it from other species. Every few million years, they harvest all the advanced civilizations and use their combined knowledge to maintain their technology. Helen felt a chill run down her spine. So if there were no more advanced civilizations to harvest, the harvesters would eventually lose their technology and die. But it would take a very long time, maybe millions of years. Paul Henderson leaned back in his chair. So our choice is to be harvested now, or hope they die of old age in a few million years. That is not much of a plan. Lisa's voice became excited. But the Watchers found another way. They discovered how to turn the harvesters' own technology against them. The final sections of the alien records contain blueprints for a weapon that could trap the harvesters using their own harvesting process. Admiral Blake stood up quickly. What kind of weapon? The details are complex, but the basic idea is simple. The weapon would create a quantum field that connects to the harvesters when they try to harvest a planet. Instead of the energy flowing from the planet to them, it would flow the other way. The harder they tried to harvest, the more trapped they would become. Helen felt the first spark of hope since the meeting began. Would this weapon destroy them? No. But it would trap them in a kind of prison made of their own energy. They would be stuck forever, unable to escape or die or continue harvesting other worlds. Carl Weber was writing equations on a whiteboard. What would be needed to build this weapon? The Watchers never finished building it. They ran out of time before the harvesters arrived. But they left complete plans hidden in different parts of the Europa ruins. The weapon would need to be built in space and powered by an entire star. The room went quiet again as everyone tried to understand what Lisa was telling them. They were talking about building a weapon that used a star as its power source. The engineering challenges alone seemed impossible. How long would it take to build something like this? Helen asked. Carl looked at his equations and shook his head. With our current technology, maybe 50 years if everything went perfectly. But we do not have 50 years, do we? Lisa answered from Europa. According to the alien timeline, the harvesters are already overdue. They could arrive any time from next year to the next decade. Paul Henderson stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see normal people going about their normal lives. They had no idea their world was about to change forever. So we cannot build this weapon in time, and we cannot evacuate everyone to safety. What exactly are we supposed to do? Admiral Blake was still reading the alien records. There might be another option. The records mention that some civilizations chose to scatter instead of making a final stand. They sent small groups of people to hide in different parts of the galaxy. How small? Helen asked. A few hundred or thousand people per ship. Not enough to maintain a full civilization, but enough to preserve the species. The idea was that even if most of the colony ships were found, some might survive long enough to rebuild. Helen looked around the table at the faces of world leaders who were being asked to make an impossible choice. Save a few thousand humans and let billions die, or try to save everyone and risk losing the entire species. There is one more thing, Lisa said from Europa. The Watchers left a personal message for whoever found their records. They said the next species to face the Harvesters would be special. Not because they were smarter or stronger, but because they refused to give up. Helen smiled sadly. They studied human history, did they? Yes. They watched Earth for thousands of years. They saw our wars and our disasters. They noticed that humans have a habit of fighting impossible battles and sometimes winning them. Paul turned away from the window. So their plan was to leave us tools and hope we are too stubborn to use them sensibly. Their plan was to give us choices that no other species had. We can build the quantum weapon if we have enough time. We can evacuate colonies if we move fast. Enough. Or we can try to do both and hope that human stubborn determination makes up for impossible odds. Helen stood up and looked at each person in the room. These were the leaders who would have to make the hardest decision in human history. We have three options. Try to build a weapon that might save the galaxy. Try to save part of our species by running away. Or try to do both and probably fail at everything. Admiral Blake closed her tablet and smiled grimly. When you put it like that, there is really only one choice. We do everything at once and hope for the best. Carl Weber nodded. The aliens were right about one thing. Humans are too stubborn to pick the sensible option. Helen looked out the window at the blue sky and white clouds. Somewhere beyond the atmosphere, Jake Morrison and his team were still uncovering alien secrets. In a few months or years, that same sky would be filled with ships belonging to creatures that had conquered the galaxy for millions of years. Then we start today, she said. Admiral Blake, I want you to begin planning colony ships that can reach other star systems. Dr. Weber, I want you to start working on the alien weapon designs. General Henderson, I want you to prepare for a war unlike anything in human history. Paul Henderson smiled for the first time during the meeting. Finally, something I understand. When do we start fighting? We already have, Helen said. The moment we decided not to give up, we started fighting. The Harvesters have never faced a species that knew they were coming and refused to surrender. They are about to learn what that feels like. As the world leaders filed out of the meeting room to begin preparing for humanity's greatest challenge, Helen remained at the window. The normal world outside would not stay normal much longer. But maybe that was not such a bad thing. Maybe it was time for humanity to become something more than normal. Roy Bennett stood in the control room of the quantum weapon and watched Earth die through the observation windows. The Harvester mothership had positioned itself between Earth and Luna, exactly as the alien records predicted. Streams of golden energy flowed from every city and forest on the planet up into the massive alien vessel. He could see the effects of the harvest with his naked eyes. The blue oceans were turning gray as the life was drained from them. The green continents were becoming brown wastelands as billions of years of evolution was consumed in a matter of hours. Earth was becoming a dead rock floating in space. Roy had volunteered for this mission along with 49 other people who understood they would not survive the next hour. The quantum weapon required someone to stay behind and manually control the activation sequence while everyone else evacuated to safety. It was a one-way mission, but Roy had never hesitated to accept it. "Control, this is Quantum Station," he said into his communication device. "Final activation sequence is ready. All personnel have been evacuated except for the volunteer crew." "Quantum Station. This is Admiral Blake. Roy, are you absolutely certain about this? Once you start the sequence, there will be no way to reverse it." Roy looked around the control room at the faces of the other volunteers. They were engineers and scientists and soldiers who had given up their lives to save the galaxy. None of them looked afraid. They all looked determined. Admiral, we are certain. The harvesters have taken the bait exactly as the Watchers predicted. They cannot stop themselves from harvesting Earth even though they must know it is a trap by now. Understood, Quantum Station. Roy, I want you to know that what you are about to do will be remembered for as long as humanity exists. Roy smiled as he looked at the massive alien device that filled most of the control room. The quantum weapon was beautiful in a terrifying way. It looked like a star trapped inside a cage made of crystallized space and time. Energy from Earth's sun flowed through transmission cables that were themselves larger than most buildings. Admiral, the Harvester mothership is beginning deep harvest procedures. This is our best chance to spring the trap. Confirmed, Quantum Station. You are cleared for final activation. Good luck, Roy. Roy disconnected the communication link and turned to his crew. Everyone ready? Dr. Amy Rodriguez nodded from her position at the energy monitoring station. She was one of the scientists who had helped design the quantum weapon based on alien blueprints. Power levels are optimal, Roy. The sun is providing more energy than we have ever channeled before. Lieutenant Steve Martinez was at the targeting controls that would focus the quantum field on the Harvester mothership. Targeting systems are locked on the primary vessel. The moment they try to complete the harvest of Earth, we will have them. Roy walked to the main activation console and placed his hand on the control that would change the fate of the galaxy. The alien symbols on the console glowed brighter as the weapon sensed his touch. It was almost as if the device was eager to finally complete its purpose. Beginning activation sequence now, he announced. The quantum weapon came alive with energy that made the air itself glow. Roy felt his hair stand up as massive electrical fields surrounded the control room. Through the windows, he could see streams of pure energy flowing from the weapon toward the Harvester mothership. But something was wrong. The energy streams were not hitting the alien vessel. Instead, they were bending around it as if the mothership was protected by an invisible shield. Amy, what are you seeing on the monitors? Dr. Rodriguez was frantically checking her instruments. Roy, the harvesters have some kind of defense system we did not anticipate. They are deflecting the quantum field away from their ship. Roy felt his heart sink. After 4 years of preparation and sacrifice, the trap was not working. The harvesters had learned from previous encounters and developed new defenses. Steve, can you adjust the targeting to compensate for their defenses? Lieutenant Martinez was working at his control station but shaking his head. The deflection field is too strong, Roy. Our quantum energy cannot penetrate it. Roy looked out at Earth and saw that the harvest was accelerating. The golden energy streams flowing from the planet to the mothership were getting brighter and faster. Soon there would be nothing left of humanity's home world except a lifeless rock. But then something unexpected happened. The deflection field around the Harvester mothership began to flicker and weaken. The alien vessel was using so much energy to harvest Earth that it could not maintain its defenses at full strength. Amy, are you seeing this? Yes, Roy. The harvesters are becoming greedy. They want to harvest Earth completely and quickly. That greed is making them vulnerable. Roy understood what was happening. The Watchers had been right about harvester psychology. When they found a particularly rich source of life energy, they could not resist taking everything at once. And that desperation made them lower their defenses. Steve, lock onto their ship now while their shields are weak. Target acquired, Roy. Quantum field is penetrating their defenses. Roy activated the final phase of the weapon and felt the entire moon shake as unimaginable amounts of energy flowed through the quantum transmission system. The weapon was drawing power directly from Earth's sun and channeling it into a field that would trap the harvesters in their own harvesting process. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The golden energy streams that had been flowing from Earth to the mothership suddenly reversed direction. Instead of draining Earth's life, the harvesters found themselves connected to the quantum field and unable to break free. It is working, Dr. Rodriguez shouted over the noise of the weapon. The harvesters are trapped in the quantum loop. The harder they try to harvest Earth, the more energy gets reflected back into their own systems. Through the observation windows, Roy could see the Harvester mothership beginning to glow with the same golden energy that had been draining Earth. But now that energy was building up inside the alien vessel with nowhere to go. Roy, we have a problem, Lieutenant Martinez called out. The quantum field is expanding beyond our projected parameters. It is starting to affect the entire solar system. Roy looked at his instruments and realized what was happening. The quantum weapon was more powerful than anyone had anticipated. Instead of just trapping the Harvester mothership, it was creating a field that would eventually encompass every planet and moon in the solar system. Amy, what happens if we shut down the weapon now? The Harvesters would break free, Roy. They would escape the trap and probably harvest every world they could find in revenge. This might be our only chance to stop them permanently. Roy made the hardest decision of his life. He activated the final control that would make the quantum field permanent and self-sustaining. The weapon would continue to operate even after Earth's sun was consumed as fuel. The Harvesters would be trapped forever, but Earth and everything else in the solar system would be destroyed in the process. All stations, this is Quantum Station, he broadcast on the emergency channel. The trap is working, but the quantum field is expanding beyond safe limits. Anyone within the solar system has approximately 1 hour to reach minimum safe distance. Roy could hear Admiral Blake's voice coming through the static. Quantum Station, this is the evacuation fleet. We are already outside the danger zone. Roy, what is your status? Admiral, we are remaining at our posts to monitor the quantum field. Someone needs to make sure the trap holds until it becomes permanent. There was a long pause before Admiral Blake responded. Understood, Quantum Station. Roy, on behalf of all humanity, thank you. Roy looked around the control room at his crew who had chosen to stay behind with him. They were watching the displays that showed the quantum field spreading throughout the solar system like a wave of crystallized spacetime. Dr. Rodriguez, how long until the field becomes self-sustaining? Based on the Watcher calculations, approximately 30 minutes, Roy. After that, the trap will hold permanently, even if we are not here to monitor it. Roy nodded and walked back to the observation windows. Earth was no longer being harvested. The quantum field had stopped the flow of energy from the planet to the Harvester mothership. But Earth was still dying as the expanding field converted matter and energy into the quantum prison that would hold the Harvesters forever. Steve, what is the status of the Harvester fleet? All vessels are caught in the quantum field, Roy. They appear to be trying to escape, but the harder they struggle, the more trapped they become. It is exactly like the Watchers predicted. Roy smiled as he watched the oldest predators in the galaxy finally meet something they could not conquer. The Harvesters had spent millions of years harvesting advanced civilizations, but they had never faced a species willing to sacrifice everything to break the cycle. Amy sent a message to the evacuation fleet. Tell them the quantum field is stable and will become permanent in 15 minutes. The Harvesters are trapped and will never harvest another civilization. As the minutes passed, Roy watched the quantum field expand to encompass the entire solar system. Earth became a frozen moment in time where the last harvest would never be completed. The sun became fuel for a weapon that would imprison the galaxy's greatest predators forever. When the field finally stabilized and became self-sustaining, Roy felt a sense of peace he had never experienced before. The mission was complete.